Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. We have gathered together some of the writers for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I am joined by Alex Hobson and Peter Baracchini today. I'm Kevin Armstrong, and we're here to talk about everyone's favorite team to either hate or love. A lot of hate going on these days, and it was a difficult night last night, boys. So let's jump right in. How are we feeling after what was a very bizarre game in Ottawa?
Much needed break is coming up, I think, is the easy thing to say. I know the Leafs really haven't been getting too much from their goaltending over the past couple of games, but last night was just a terrible all around effort. I would say the goaltending definitely didn't help, but the Leafs really didn't do too much to keep their heads above the line.
Yeah, and I think
we were talking and we said that this was the second fastest Leaf goalie pull ever when Hutchinson got the yank there at 6:13 in the first. It was 6:09 before that, right, Peter Baracchini?
Yeah.
As he looked it up for us. And wow, that to me, I'm thinking if you're Hutchinson, your confidence is now gone. And it just went downhill from there. What did you think, Peter?
Mix of everything. Fatigue definitely has set in, and I think we noticed that during the Winnipeg Jets series. They were really, really tired, and I guess maybe the whole entire shutout of the Edmonton Oilers and Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid may have been, a little bit in their heads a little bit too much. But yeah, fatigue is setting in, and ever since then, it's just been constant turnovers, bad puck management, bad decisions, poor placement, especially on the power play too. I know that the biggest one was, all four players last night, they were, focusing on Tim Stützle, and he made a phenomenal pass over to Drake Batherson, and he had an empty cage, and no one knew he was there. And all four penalty killers were just staring at him. So it's just getting back into the zone of like how they were able to defend early on, because they did a good job getting the pucks out or keeping the pucks out of the net and mitigating their shots against. They could get back to that if they, study up this week, learn from their mistakes. It could be a really good turnaround for them.
So they've won one in overtime in their last six. When we were talking maybe 2 weeks ago or so, these guys are kings of the North. Just hand them the division now. We can just fast forward a few weeks, get to the playoffs, because this is nothing here. They're clear front runners. When they hit the ice again in Calgary on Friday, they could be in second place because Winnipeg has 3 games this week before Toronto even gets back on the ice. Kind of a meltdown, I would say, that they're going through. And guys, I live in Edmonton. I went for a walk in the River Valley this weekend. I looked everywhere around Edmonton. I couldn't find what the Leafs left behind when they were here in Edmonton. They left something behind, and I can't find it. I'm looking everywhere.
Yeah.
I cannot find it. Now, you were saying that this is a good time for a break. At the same time, I'm wondering, wouldn't they want to get right back out on the ice and fix this now against somebody? Because this has got to be a really bad taste in your mouth for the next couple of days.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to the break. I know the Leafs would probably, I'd imagine, want to get back on the ice as soon as possible and correct their mistakes, like he said. But at the same time, Freddie Anderson hasn't really been doing his job lately. He hasn't been performing at the expectations we've all hoped for. And Michael Hutchinson, I know he was only in the game for 3 shots tonight, but if he's going to keep playing like that, the Leafs desperately need a different option between the pipes. And I think these extra 4 days off will be enough time for Jack Campbell to hopefully get healthy. And every time Jack Campbell's played this year for the Leafs, they've shown up and they've put on a good performance in front of him. So hopefully they can reconcile that same energy once Campbell gets back, hopefully during this back-to-back coming up.
Are we at that point where it's the goalie, Peter? It's not Freddie that we've seen in years past where he saves the game or makes that save at that perfect time, that keeps the boys in it. But is that where we're at? Is that the weakest link at this point?
Yes and no, because, let's face it, a lot of the mistakes or a lot of the goals against were a result of turnovers and positioning. And I know that Anthony Stewart pinpointed the puck management where Travis Boyd, is electing to pass his teammate that's right in front of him when he had a clear chance to clear it out, and Brady Tkachuk takes it and he gets a shot on net. So it's a bit of that. It's a bit of the fact that, he really hasn't made any timely saves, but it's kind of hard to pinpoint at what's more egregious at this point because their defense has been pretty bad. And there have been times where Frederik Andersen has been stellar in net and the play in front of him has just been, subpar. But I was talking about this with Andrew Forbes yesterday on our podcast, 6 in the 6, and the fact that we've seen Frederik Andersen make quality saves. I mean, I looked back to the playoff series where he made that fantastic stick paddle save against David Pastrnak. David Pastrnak, of all players, who started to just come into his own at that time. Those are the saves that Andersen needs to make on a consistent basis. He has made them in the past. It's just we're not seeing it right now, and that is a bit of a concern. But I think it's 50-50. Andersen needs to be better. The defense needs to be better. And quite frankly, the offense needs to be a bit better as well because their passing and connectivity in the offensive zone just hasn't been there.
Right. Now let's get that official plug in because Sticks in the 6 is my favorite podcast. And you can find Sticks in the 6 on thehockeywriters.com or your favorite podcast network. Subscribe to the Sticks in the 6 with Peter Baracchini and his trusty sidekick. Who's the sidekick in that one, Peter?
I think I would be the sidekick. I think I'd be the sidekick.
I tried. Since Forbes not here, I tried to give you some. But make sure to subscribe to that podcast and subscribe to this YouTube channel. There's always more content here on the Hockey Writers. We've got over 100 writers covering all teams in the NHL. And we would love to hear your feedback as well on this episode number 4. We've been having fun so far. I did notice that in our last episode, guys, we didn't have that one player that we circled and said, he's not playing very well. And now look what happened. Now the whole team's not playing well. So I don't know. I'm saying it's a powerful YouTube channel that you're watching right now. You should pay attention. So let's go to the big one that everyone, I swear, every player that has talked about, he could be traded. Everyone says Toronto should trade for him. So here we are. We're in that window where a trade at this point would make sense given the timing. In the next 14 days, there are 4 games. So you could trade a rostered player at this point and try to limp your way through. But what do you guys think? Are we at that point where we could see the trade coming?
I think so. I mean, Alex pinpointed it out a few episodes ago that this is a specific window that we've been waiting for the Leafs. If they needed to make a move, they can, because they have about 8 or 9 days off and about 3 or 4 games in between during this whole entire 2-week stretch. So there's a lot of time. So if they acquire a player, they could come over quarantine and it won't hinder them that much in terms of play time. And if it does come down to it, there are plenty of options right now. I know we've talked about it extensively on here about who could come over, but right now, it's a big question mark right now. We don't know who. I know that Ricard Raquel, Pierre LeBrun stated previously that they could be all in on him. And I wrote about him, how he could be a really good acquisition in the top 6. The fact of the matter is they're looking to start a proposal off with Rodi Namirov. And that's going to be a hefty price. The price is going to be big. And you know what? If you're going to have to acquire a big name player like that, you may have to deal with it or part ways with them. But also, Dubas has worked his magic before and trying to find other prospects that have value and not trade away his aces. So I think that'll be something to keep an eye on as well. What will Dubas do? Will he go all in, or will he sort of try and take a step back, evaluate everything, and go for a safer option?
Uh-huh. Alex, what are you thinking? I know one of your first stories, you were talking about a player that could fit here. Do you think we're going to see that trade over the next couple of days?
I think we will, yeah. I remember last year leading up to that Jack Campbell, Kyle Clifford trade that Dubas made with the Kings. The Leafs were on a little bit of their own slide at that point as well. I think they had lost 7 of their last 11 or something like that. And I think they're in a similar position now. And while their chances at making the playoffs aren't at risk right now, their chances of losing that first place lead are at risk. And I think it's just one of those things where you kind of need a shakeup at some point in the roster, whether it's a new forward, like bringing in a depth forward or maybe a depth defenseman or anything, or even going out and getting a big name like Rickard Rakell. I think they got to do something to shake up the roster. And I think there's no better time to do it than right now. I mean, it's one of those things where Kyle Dubas, I would imagine, would want to put out the fire before it spreads. And I think just with the quarantine period and with the lack of games that they would lose from whoever they trade, it's really there's really no better time than right now. They're in a slide. We got the 2 4-day breaks coming up. I just think now would be the best time to make a trade if they were to. So,
yeah, I tend to agree with you guys now. When we talked about it before, and I wrote the article on 5 reasons why they wouldn't make a trade, I think some of those things have now changed because these last 6 games, I get that every season you got your ups and downs and your droughts and everything else, but these guys are so flat. Sheldon Keefe loses his mind on Saturday night. If you should ever see a team come out looking a little bit different on the next night, you would think that it would have been that Toronto Maple Leaf team. Instead, they looked really terrible. And Keefe really not even any emotion after, I guess, he had the meltdown Saturday night. He didn't show a whole lot of emotion on Sunday night, that's for sure. And now I'm beginning to think maybe there is, and maybe this is a time when it's time to push the chips into the middle. And I know that, Shanahan and the Shanahan plan has never been about mortgaging the future. It's always been about developing a big system that's going to be good for a while. But the kind of league we're in, with a flat cap, with all these things that are going on right now, it's like, man, if you got to win a chance to win the Stanley Cup, God, Stanley Cup in Toronto, can you imagine if you got a chance to do that? I don't care if it's one time in the next 50 plus years again, you're heroes. Put everybody's numbers in the banner. There won't even be a number that can be played again in Toronto because they'll all be retired. These guys will be heroes in Maple Leaf lore forever. I'm a little bit wound up still from that Sens game last night. But you guys know what I'm saying. Like, it's time to push in the chips and get her done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If that were to happen, it would make the Chicago Cubs ending their 100-year drought look like a tiny little street parade.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because the Leafs drought is 50 years shorter than the Cubs drought was. But yeah, it's just the team needs a cup, and I agree. If the pieces are there, and if you can make the moves to make that happen, that is the ultimate goal in the end. So you got to do it. You got to go for it.
And I think, Peter, when you said Amirov, and he's a big chip, but I think he's probably another season, maybe even 2 away from cracking that lineup. I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. I've been watching some of the KHL, and they've made it into the second round now, his team there, but I think he's got 13 points in 31 games right now. Like, he's not lighting it up. I don't see him coming into Toronto next season. So yeah, maybe he is the trade bait at this point, because he is a solid prospect in about a year or 2, depending on whose system. But do you guys think, we talked a few minutes ago about the weakest link? I don't know. I've looked up and down the goalies. What kind of goalie could they get? Is there even a trade for a goalie at this point? What do you guys think?
I don't think there is a trade for a goalie at this point. I think if the Leafs are going to do anything goaltending wise, it'll happen after the season's over. But think about it. Like, I can't see a situation where anyone would take on Frederik Andersen, considering the fact that he's had his struggles this year on one of the best teams in the league. His money isn't really that much of an issue, but I don't think there's really a team out there that would trade for him at this point in the season. And otherwise, you've got Jack Campbell, and Campbell's shown flashes of brilliance in the times that he's been able to start. And on top of that, I'm not sure who would even be available on the market for the Leafs to pursue in a trade. I mean, I know Columbus has a couple of decent options. I know that there's options out there, but I'm not sure that would be the first trade the Leafs would make, because I'm not sure how they would win a trade like that, because you can't really upgrade from Frederik Andersen at this trade deadline in particular. And I just don't know. I don't think they've got the space with both Freddie and Campbell there.
Right. Peter, is there anybody on the market you think that Dubas could work some magic and bring into Toronto before the deadline?
I've been going to this player quite a bit, and mainly because if there's a situation because of the cap hit and where the Leafs are at with their situation, it's going to be a contract in, contract out situation, which is why Rickard Rakell, he has a decent cap hit. Alex Kerfoot, he's making $3.5 million, just a shade under what he's making right now. Michael Granlund, around the same range as Alex Kerfoot. Even someone like Eric Stahl that I just wrote about, his cap hit is in the same range as Alex Kerfoot. And all three of those players could play either center or wing. So you have the versatility, you have the cap, you have the space to work with it. Obviously, Alex Kerfoot is not going to be enough for any of those three players, but you would have to sweeten the pot, especially if you're looking at maybe Nashville or Anaheim as, your potential top trading partners, so to speak. So going back to Rodion and Mirov, I mean, he could be, depending on what his contract situation is in the KHL, he could stay over a little bit longer, or he can make the way over to the AHL. And if he's going to be in the system with the Toronto Marlies at some point, that's going to be fantastic for him if he still stays in the system. But yeah, I'm thinking Alex Kerfoot at this point. Pierre Engvall, his cap hit is in the millions. You could try and offload that. Throw in a couple, maybe. I think maybe even you try to utilize your first round draft pick, because the drafting this year, not that the prospects are bad, it's just you don't have a general sense of where everyone is going to land like you did in 2020, 2019, and the seasons before, or the years before that. So that's going to be a big trading chip for the Maple Leafs as well.
Yeah, good point on that, because even a first round pick, a lot of these leagues are not started up or not even playing near the level they should be. So maybe that first round draft pick isn't going to be anything for a little bit longer than usual, because they're practically losing this entire year of development in some of the leagues. OHL hasn't even started, right? So what do you do with that? So make sure, I've got to drop the plug for all of us here at the Hockey Writers. Make sure you follow us on social media, on our Twitter channel, as well as Facebook, and we're on Instagram, all the places. There's simply no way you can get away from the Hockey Writers. We're there for you. You got to read our stuff. Comment on it. We love the comments. That's what we're all about, is getting the dialogue going. And that's what you see here with the three of us chatting right now. That's why we call it the lounge. There's no better place than to go and sit in the lounge and talk with your friends about hockey. And we get to do it virtually every week with our Toronto Maple Leafs lovers and haters. And there are so many out there. Lovers and haters could be a good title for you, Peter, for your article coming up and looking at the first 30 games and what we've learned. Love and hate at this point. Give us kind of the broad strokes of what you're looking at for that article.
Yeah, actually, I was working on it during that game because there was a lot that I needed to restructure, retweak about, because, I mean, it was more in a positive light because there were some good aspects to the season before, or the way they started off early on in the season. But I think the recent stretch right now, it's going to be focusing on like the improvements, and more so specifically how the defense at the beginning of the season was great, not so much right now. And I compare last season to this season. Complacency, that's probably their biggest enemy right now. And Luke Fox had a great article on Sportsnet that just came out, how, they gotta, not be over complacent and just keep everything steady, find that consistency in their game. And I mean, obviously right now, halfway, this isn't exactly the stretch or the kind of game that they want to going into this sort of mini break. But I think, you know what? Every team goes through adversity. And I think this is the first bout of adversity that they've basically faced all season right now. So this could be good for them going forward. You have the vets in Spezza, Thornton, and even TJ Brody at this point that can try and like calm the group down, get everyone under control, get back to the way that they played before. So I think it could be great. And I just hope that, you know what, this is the only bad stretch that we can see, because if they do a mini reset right now, regroup, everything should be fine.
Yeah. it's the consistency. And we even heard Keefe say that over the weekend as well, that it's the consistency.
Mhm.
And you couldn't have hit it more on the head on that in these last few games of the consistent play. And, the other thing that I think is catching up to this team is now that they are over the halfway point is the other teams, when you only have to study 6 teams and be ready for those teams, and you get to see them and you get to try your game plan against them and do all these things. I think we're starting to see that. Toronto was catching a lot of teams with their firepower, and they had switched things up a lot from last season, right? And they came out strong and they caught a lot of teams. But now they're not catching anybody. Everyone knows their game plan. You saw that really well in the Winnipeg series. I thought Paul Maurice, I think, is a fantastic coach, and that's a great team. All these people that keep on saying the North Division is not good, they have not watched the Oilers and the Jets and the Leafs, and those are some solid teams there. And Paul Maurice, he kind of knew what they were doing. And I don't know if you guys saw the Dubois clip leading in, because Dubois killed these guys when he played for Columbus during the play-in series, right? And they said, so how do you beat the Leafs? And he said, you take it to them. You take it to them, you play their game right in their face, and you come right at them. Well, what did Ottawa do last night? What did Winnipeg do? That's what we're seeing now, is the competition's kind of catching up to these guys. And if they aren't consistent, perfect every shift, the competition's jumping all over them. Yeah. Alex, tell me I'm wrong.
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I think from here on out, what they need more than anything is to outwork the other team. And honestly, I won't say a lack of work ethic, but being outworked by the other team is what caused them their demise in the playoffs these past couple seasons. I mean, Columbus didn't have the skill the Leafs had last year, but they worked hard, and they kept chipping away at the Leafs. They kept chipping away and making him tired, and they just would not go away. It was like a wind-up toy. And we saw that eventually Columbus outworked them in the end of that series. And the same thing happens. Boston's a hardworking team. They've proven that to us these past 3 years, or past 3 times that they've eliminated them in the playoffs. Honestly, I think more than anything, they just, like I said, they got to outwork the other team and hope that their goaltending improves a little bit, and they can make the crucial saves when the time comes. But we definitely need to see an all-around better effort from the rest of the team, because that effort against Ottawa last night was not ideal.
No. So here's another twist, since we have just a little bit more time. I know that when we've seen Jack Campbell, so that's my other C in your story. If you're looking at this, Peter, you've got complacency, then we've got consistency, and now we've got Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
So Campbell, he's looked really good when he's been in net, but he gets hurt every game. Like, you cannot be riding that, especially imagine that in the playoffs. If that's your guy that gets you through the first, second round, and third round, he gets tweaked and he's out. And then you're going back to Anderson, who we all know is a really slow starter when he hasn't played in a long time. Is Campbell is the other C in that story, as far as I can see at this point, because he is just kind of a wild card. Is he as good as we hope he is at this point, Peter?
Well, it's funny that you do mention that, because I do have him as part of the story, as maybe someone that he does become the starter at this point. And small sample since coming over. I mean, minimal games. I think he only played about 6 games last season before the lockout or not the lockout, but before the pandemic hit into play pause. 3 games this year. He's been absolutely stellar. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you that the injury is a bit of a concern right now, but Keith said that he is getting better, and the injury itself, I don't think is something to be alarmed about. I think it's just something that he re-aggravated and just needed extra time. But, 3 games, he has a goals against average just under 1. Not under 1, sorry, under 2. It's better than Anderson's. I think it's going to be around 1.5, 1.6 maybe. And he has a 9.4 save percentage. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is better than Anderson's at this point. And you've seen him when he's in net, despite the only 3 games, he is more confident. He's calm. He's not in a panic. He locates the puck really quickly, and he just ends the play right then and there when he needs to. And not only that, I just love every single time when there's a player in front of him, he just stick taps them to let them know, hey, good job. No matter if it's a good play or bad play. I mean, they seem to rally around him more. And I'm not saying that, it's a different game under Anderson, because they have played better and they have played, not to their potential in front of him. But I think right now you're seeing something more with Campbell and the way that they play than compared to Frederik Andersen right now. So it's going to be really interesting. I think they should roll with him. He's got better numbers. Why not roll with him when he gets back? And if that case, just keep him in a bubble. I mean, wrap him up in bubble wrap, just to make sure that he doesn't get injured again, because they could really use him right now.
Alex, you wrote an article a few weeks ago that made the case for Campbell should get the look for the starting job next season. Now, after watching the last couple of weeks, do you think, are you with Peter on this one, that he deserves the look for the starting job right now?
I think ultimately this year it just comes to whoever's hotter. I've said this a number of times. It's a 56-game season, and the playoffs are going to be here before we know it. So at this point, you can't really afford to gamble on certain guys if you want them to do well. And when I say that I think Campbell should be the starter next season, it's just because in the sample size that we've seen from him this year, he's proven that he was drafted 11th overall for a reason, right? Like, you can see in the way that he plays calm and collected in the net that he has the tools to be an effective starting goalie. And he has been better than Anderson this year, albeit in a small sample size, even though it was only 3 games compared to the 20 or so that Anderson's played. But ultimately, if he's doing better than Anderson, if he comes back, say for this next back-to-back against Calgary, coming up this Friday and Saturday, and he has a good game, you should start him again. Don't go back to Anderson just so you can, just because he's Anderson. Like, if Jack Campbell comes out and plays his heart out and he puts up a good effort and the team plays well in front of him, you just got to go with the hotter goalie at this point.
Yeah, I think we're there as well. The one thing, guys, that I've found when I'm watching our show is that we agree too much. So for next week, I'm going to actually start collecting some of the crazy mean tweets that I see, and we'll read some mean tweets. We'll have to maybe try some character development on that, and because there's some crazy mean tweets against this Maple Leafs team. Facebook comments on our stories.
Oh, it's a cesspool.
Oh, yeah. Wow. And I think we need to dive a little bit more into that, because we have a nice, calm, cool conversation about what the team could do. And then you read online, it's like, wow. Yeah.
I'd like to see how the old prof responds to those tweets.
Oh boy, we might have to prepare him for that.
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's really interesting to see some of the comments, but yeah, some things do get out of hand. I mean, listen, I understand the frustration. Like, we haven't seen a team this team has been pretty consistent up until this point. We haven't had a team this resilient and this headstrong in quite some time. So for us to make it something big out of 1 or a week and a half of a poor stretch, yeah, I get it. We want our team we want the Leafs to play at its best, but at the same time, this has been the only hiccup throughout the whole entire season, and that's saying a lot considering what we've seen in the past with this team.
Yeah. Well, here's an example. This will be a preview for how we'll do this. This one I saw last night watching the Ottawa game. It was when it went up about 4-1. And somebody put out there on social media, I have officially just watched my last game this year as a Leaf fan. My God. Goes along, says a few things I'm not going to repeat. Enough said, rant over. See you next year. Good luck. I got better things to do with my time than watch this disappointing garbage year after year. Go Jays, go.
Oh, we're starting with the Go Jays go. Okay. All right.
We did say something about baseball last time, didn't we?
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah. But I think, I've always said to you guys, I can't get mad at the passionate fan. Like, this is a fan base that has been loving this team and riding along with this team for so many years that it's personal now. Like, people take these games and these losses personally. So
you don't act up like that if you're you don't act up like that if you're not a true fan of the team. And the sad part, but the kind of, at the same time, the good part about that tweet is, that guy will be watching the next game.
Oh yeah. He just had to get it out there.
You can't
that
stay
time.
away. Everyone goes through that mood swing at the end of a bad game. But even after last night's game, as pathetic as it was, he'll be back watching them next Friday. I guarantee it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And you know, we'd be lying if we said we haven't been at that same point at some point.
Mhm.
You know, right?
Almost every game for me last year.
Yeah,
Honestly, even the wins, I was mad after.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on here to talk Leafs with us. We hope that you put in your comments into the section. Let us know if you want us to talk about some things. Maybe you've got some mean tweets to send our way too. Not to us. We're good guys. You don't need to be mad at us. And we'll read them on the show as well and see what we think of those. But it's a great time to sit in a Maple Leaf lounge, talk about everyone's favorite team to love and hate. And we hope you love the show. We will see you next week on the Maple Leafs Lounge.